Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Got a lot of news to talk about today, and then at the end maybe we'll cover some just things that we should be doing, general tips and things because of all of this happening. And there's certainly a ton of stuff in the news. It's really been a busy last few weeks, in fact, when it comes to just constant news going on and big things that are affecting us and that are moving us closer to that collapse that we talk about all the time on here. And of course, you know, some of the big stuff right now is this earthquake and series of earthquakes causing massive amounts of devastation. All this talk of, you know, what kind of, war readiness level are we really at? I mean, is it really that close? And then, of course, the ongoing drama over this balloon airship from China, and very possibly the chance that some past generals have committed treason by not notifying a former president of their presence in the past, and other things. It's just a lot going on. But I want to bring to you some news that may not be at the top of the headlines, but it's very important because I believe it's all connected. It's all just more pieces to the big puzzle that we talk about all the time. And so we'll do that. Then we'll try to get to maybe some prepping tips of things that we should be doing right now because, it's all kind of falling apart. Wanted to talk just briefly about my Rumble channel, okay? For those of you that don't know, Rumble is another platform just like YouTube. At least it does the same thing, except it's free speech. And I am starting to migrate a lot of my content over there. I'm even putting up content on Rumble that you won't see here on YouTube because I can say what I want on Rumble. So I would encourage you to check it out. Subscribe to the channel over there. I'll leave a link down in the description below. Put up a video over there today, one yesterday. My wife and I are doing weekly videos on there, just kind of a fireside type of chat of just anything goes, just our opinions of what's going on. So I would encourage you to do that because eventually YouTube is just not going to let content like mine be on here. And I know that my days are numbered. And so that's a good place to find me over there on Rumble. Also, in your preppers, you should be stocking up. And so you might want to check some of the links down in the description below. One of them being my Patriot Supply. We can get some really good deals on freeze-dried food because we need to be stocking up. Now, moving on to the news. First thing that jumped out at me today is this one. The Pope is talking once again. He says the entire world is at war and in self-destruction. It's funny because that sounds very similar to the thing that I've been saying for a while, that we are headed to a world war and that our society is collapsing, that we're just falling apart. And here's the Pope saying pretty much the same thing. He did say something similar weeks back when he said that we're on the brink of a world war. Now he says the entire world is at war. Echoing his words, the head of the United Nations, I know, all these really important special people. The head of the United Nations said he fears world is headed for a wider war over Ukraine and Russia. Well, wider war is another word for world war, kind of like, they don't want to say that we're in a, transitory state of inflation and we're not technically in a recession, all these mind games, these word games that they play on us. North Korea says they're ready for a war and they expect full readiness and they are drilling and getting ready for a war, which is what most of these other states are also saying. This one was interesting here. Former Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali, I'm sure I'm butchering that name, Bennett. And remember, he was Prime Minister last year of Israel. He said that the United States blocked his attempt at creating a Russia-Ukraine peace deal. Interesting, and goes on to talk about how they believed it was because, the United States just wants to check out their cool weapons on Russia and see how effective they are. I know that sounds silly, but it may not be too far from the truth. So in other words, it's just more indication that the United States wants this. They want a war. The government, the leaders, the military-industrial complex, the banks, they all want this. They want it bad. China is all upset because we popped its balloon. They are threatening a response and that this was a clear overreaction. It's silly. It's silly. We should have blown the thing out of the water before it even came close to Alaska. Because reports are now is that NORAD had been tracking that pretty much since it left mainland China. according to some reports I was seeing, and we should have blown that thing out of water, out of the air a long time before it came to the United States. Pentagon officials are saying now that the balloon could have been carrying explosives in a huge payload the size of a jetliner, is what is being told to British news by Pentagon officials. They believe that there was some type of explosives on it. Maybe it was explosives to self-detonate itself, to self-destruct, or it could have been explosives to be used on us. Who knows? Switching gears, there was a train derailment in Ohio a day and a half or so ago. They have ordered evacuations because of fears of explosions, and just moments before I hit the record button, a news alert popped up on my phone saying that there was just recently, in the last few moments, an explosion in Ohio. I cannot give you any details on that, but it does appear that it's pretty bad up there. There was also a massive fire outbreak at a shipping warehouse in Chicago. I'm not saying that these things are being done on purpose, but they're just all adding to the chaos and confusion that's going on, and disruption, because these things are disrupting, the supply chain. And it's all pieces to the puzzle, right? It's all a big puzzle, and each one of them's a little piece that is significant in their own way. I talked about this just a couple of days ago, but I wanted to bring this up again because this is important. Ranchers are worried that there could be a disease outbreak amongst the cattle herds. Now, just the other day, I talked about how the American herd right now, beef herd, is the lowest it's been since 1962. The lowest numbers since 1962. That came out recently with the USDA. This is significant considering our population is vastly more in population than in 1962, and that's not even including the millions and millions of illegals that are coming across our border every year. It's just, exploding our population, and we have a smaller herd, which means, number one, more expensive beef is on the menu, and it could get to the point that it's just completely off the menu altogether, because that's what the World Economic Forum wants. They don't want you eating it. They've said that many times, and now there's worry about a potential disease outbreak. I did see some unconfirmed information, and that's why I don't really have it, but I'll mention it, that there was possibly some type of laboratory working on like hoof and mouth disease out in Kansas, very close to herds. Who knows if that's gonna, it may not mean anything, but we know how these labs kind of work. The last couple of days, on top of all this stuff going on, there's been a global cyber attacks. It started in Italy yesterday. Almost the entire country was without internet, and now it's expanded, and Italy was the one that started the warning, saying that there's been thousands of computer servers around the world that's been hit with these ransomware hacking attacks. I don't know much more, couldn't find a whole lot more if it's a really bad deal, or is this just, is this a normal thing? I don't think it is, according to what I'm reading, but it could be the start of something. Because, remember, Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum just this year said that there most likely will be catastrophic cyber attacks within the next year or two. So remember those job numbers that they were bragging about just a few days ago? We've gained 500,000 jobs. And all of us are like, how in the world did we gain 500,000 jobs? Considering just in the last few months, we've heard of all these big corporations laying off tens of thousands of people. Well, guess what? That was wrong. According to the Federal Reserve, the economic data charts, we actually lost 3 million jobs in January alone. 3 million jobs in January alone, but there was a gain of certain other jobs of 517,000, and that's what the news media and the White House decided to focus on. So when you take the 3 million job loss and the 500,000 job gain, it ends up working out to where there was an actual loss of 2.5 million jobs in 1 month in January. So, you can't believe anything a politician says. How do you know when they're lying? When their mouth is moving. Speaking of the, people crossing the border illegally, Arizona, there's a hospital there. It's on the brink of collapse. spending $20 million on migrant care. No one has a solution. I just pointed this one out because this is an ongoing theme all across the border states and cities. They are really struggling, and it's becoming a third world country down there. I mean, there is a definite collapse happening along the border in a lot of these areas because of the massive, massive influx of illegals. It's like the elephant in the room. No one's talking about it enough. We're focused on Ukraine and China and Russia, and all those are legitimate things. You know, I talk about them all the time. But the stuff that's going on at the border and the amount of massive influx of illegals, it is destroying us from within. Absolutely destroying us from within. We have to get serious about our preparedness level, folks. The possibility, the very real likelihood of a conventional kinetic world war in the coming days and weeks is real. It's real. And the possibility of other things happening because of that. You know, it could open the doorway for their dream digital currency. It could open the doorway for their digital ID and their digital passport, all this kind of stuff. And so we have to get ourselves prepared for that. We have to be ready in case that stuff happens, because it looks like it is happening. Doesn't mean it is, but it looks like it is. So, folks, like I say all the time, get stocked up. Continue getting out there. I'm not saying you should sell your house. I'm not saying you should go massively into debt. It's not that. What you should do is be taking it very seriously. Stocking up as much as you can on food, topping things off, fuel, make sure your gas cans are topped off and filled, make sure your vehicles stay pretty full on gasoline, water supplies, if you store it, make sure it's fresh and topped off. Start focusing on growing food. We're getting close to that time for many of you that you can start in a greenhouse or in your home, starting seeds so that by the time it's ready to plant, they're ready to move over. Put a lot of focus on that this year, folks. Expand. We are talking about very potentially expanding our garden by maybe up to 50%. And we already had a pretty large garden last year. So we're working on that right now of just expanding that. One of the things that you should start kind of thinking and doing the research, if you don't know, is what it was like going through World War II. And I think it'll be a lot worse, but it's at least a good starting point. During World War II, there was shortages of a lot of things because it was going to the war effort. Tires was hard to come by. Ammunition, anything made by metal, especially like copper and brass and lead, all of that was going to the war effort to make ammunition. Things like flour, sugar, your staples, coffee, all of that kind of stuff. It was very hard to come by. And so you should at least use that as a kind of a gauge of how to prepare, stocking up on those things. You can stock up, put them in buckets, seal them up. They'll have a pretty long life for most of those items. But you certainly want to be stocking up, because if we find ourselves in a global war, it could be way worse than it was during World War II. We just don't have the manufacturing capabilities right now that we once did, and our economy and the whole supply chain is already in a very, very weakened state. And so if we end up in an even broader war than what we're already in with supplying Ukraine to Russia, it could be very devastating. And so I just want to seriously encourage you stocking up on medical supplies. Those have already become more and more difficult to get, not just first aid, but as much over the counter, and if you're capable of even prescription medications. They're going to start making it difficult to get your farm meds. Most farm meds, you can go to a farm store now for your livestock and buy them, antibiotics and other things like that. Starting mid-year, it's going to be required to have a veterinary's prescription signature to get those things. So maybe stock up on those things also. And then just, parts, car parts, like I said, tires, any other car parts, things that you might need to just, keep things functioning around your house. If you burn firewood and you cut your own firewood, do you have the things to maintain your chainsaws? Extra chains, extra parts, spark plugs, other things like that are going to fail on them. This is the kind of stuff you need to be focused on right now. And then also, one of the things you should always be focusing on is firearms and ammunition. I was just checking this morning, and ammunition right now is pretty cheap. As cheap as it's been in the last 2 or 3 years. But that's probably not going to last very long, especially if we end up in a broader conflict. So stock up on that kind of stuff too. Just be smart about it. I'm not saying, again, that you have to take out mortgages and sell everything you own, but certainly be putting a serious effort into it. You know, extra clothing, extra pair of boots. If you have prescription glasses, maybe go get a couple of cheap pairs. Different things like that, because if we end up in a real conflict with China, Russia, maybe North Korea and Iran, folks, it's going to be very devastating, especially compounded with all the stuff of illegal immigration and shortages and inflation and digital currencies. This is the collapse that I've talked about for a while, and the Pope himself seems to be echoing my words. Maybe he watches this channel. That'd be interesting to know. Not that I would care. Folks, it's time to get your houses in order. Seriously. You need to be preparing and stocking up and getting yourself ready. Preparing mentally, physically, and most especially spiritually. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.